Open your eyes.
If you are wondering why everything going on in the world feels so terribly off, then you have come to the right place. A veil has been put over the eyes of humanity. Evil people in high places have been hiding the truth in plain sight and building a false reality on lies and deception for far too long. And now, their time is coming to an end. It's time to fight back, to wake up, and to begin an uprising. Now is a time for judgment.
This is a time for judgment. Welcome to today's show. We all know that radiation is very, very dangerous, right? We hear about it all the time. We hear about atomic bombs and the effects of radiation from World War II. You could see it and, glorified in a sense in movies like The Hills Have Eyes. And of course, it affects us in our day-to-day life, right? If you go to the doctor for an x-ray, they put that big get-up on you to protect you from radiation. Sometimes even at the dentist office to protect you from these things, right? Now, why would they do that? Well, because radiation's dangerous, right? But as we've moved towards a dumber time period, which we live in, obviously, the dumbest time to ever be alive, people wouldn't even know that they had to boil water out of a pond to drink it to prevent bacterial or, people in today's society actually think they can drink ocean water without distilling or doing anything to it, that they could just grab a cup. That's not even a joke. It's true. So when people hear about 5G and 6G and these towers, they immediately just roll their eyes. They think it's crazy. But scientists have actually argued about the dangers of radiation and what it does to people. So do you think it's a coincidence that right now, all we hear about in the news, and we've never heard it the last 50, 75 years ever, since TV and the radio have been around, you haven't heard stuff about mental health problems, have you? You haven't heard stuff about depression. You haven't heard these things about lack of focus. This is all normalized, but nobody goes, well, why is that? What's going on? Why do I have headaches? Why am I so tired all the time? Why am I not motivated? Well, because you're under the effects of radiation, of course. But as we continue to be told that we need to make our phones faster and faster so we can download the next Backstreet Boys song quicker, we continue to allow them to do the things that they've always wanted to do to us without telling us, because we can't actually see the rays unless we put on X-ray glasses or something out of the military or out of a movie. We don't believe it's actually occurring. So I wanted to do this video again to help raise awareness. This is a very good thing to look at. Now, the Clintons are the most corrupt family probably in the history of the world, but obviously most people in this country know how corrupt they are. Yet, we do have liberals who actually worship these people and think they're wonderful, like Hillary Clinton, because they're under mind control. And these same people believe what's going on now with Biden in the White House is also a very good thing, and these are wonderful people. They are very, very dumbed down. Now, I'm doing this video not just because I want to talk about the dangers of radiation. I want to show you that whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, these people do not care about humanity. Now, this White House press briefing from Bill Clinton talks about how they used human beings as lab rats during this time period to do experiments with radiation. He has to come out and apologize for it. Why do you ask? Why didn't they just ignore it? Well, because back then, reporting was actually done. People actually, went to the news and certain things happened in local affiliates and et cetera, and people actually stood up and protested this. So the White House had to address it. Do you see the government who works for us had to come forward and address why they were doing these experiments? To try to sugarcoat it, even though after they tell you this stuff, people are still mad. In today's society, as you see, just some 25 years later, because this is from 1997, what you see today is that, nobody has to address or be accountable for anything. We could have laws being broken by the president. We could have, whether you believe these stories or not, these stories about the laptop, which of course, a lot of these are just CIA psyops. But let's just say hypothetically, just the fact that that story's out there, you would say that the FBI or the government, the president would be investigated because he's, working in collusion with other countries. These are all treason, illegal. These are things that are crimes. We're talking about the president, right? But in today's society, what do in the White House? Well, they don't answer anything. They just give you dumbed down answers. They deflect, or they just bring up things like racism, sexism, transphobia, all this stuff, these words, they just bring them up to rile people up and get people distracted from what's really going on. So all those things that I mentioned are actually occurring. All that poison that's going on that you can't see, that's going on to yourself, that's affecting your body. And again, Just think when you listen to this clip about when you go to the doctor's office, how adamant they are about you if you're getting an x-ray, that you need to be covered in this heavy thing to protect you from the dangers of radiation, right? But then think about the fact that scientists, doctors, people have come forward and talked about 5G, on our way to 6G, by the way, and how dangerous it is because of the radiation. And think to yourself, well, when I'm in the doctor's office, I need it because I'm directly under it. Yet there's a tower on every street corner. Now there's a tower on every street light. There's a tower you probably right up the road from you that you don't even see because they're hidden in trees or they're put on top of water towers and they look like birds from the distance. So think about that and how that could be good for you. But if you're somebody who's a denier of radiation experiments on the people, think about how soon the cell phone came out and we went to 2G, 3G after this was done, because this was the experiment that was being done to make sure that radiation would really do harm, this type of radiation, to people. And they had a whole notebook of things. Okay, this amount of radiation, that amount of radiation. What does it do to the person? Oh, that just makes them depressed. Oh, this gives them cancer. Oh, this gives them a brain tumor. Oh, okay, let's take notes. We'll write it down. And then, oh, wait, we got caught doing it. Oh, well, we'll come out and say, it was morally wrong for us to do that. We shouldn't have done it. Well, why would you do that type of testing in the first place if you weren't planning on doing it on your own people? Oh, because you were worried about dropping a wink atomic bomb in another country and you wanted to see the after effects. We already knew the after effects of radiation. People have seen it, right? We've heard all about it from World War II. So they weren't doing anything that nobody knew about as far as radiation was concerned. They were doing it with, of course, testing out cell phones and testing out the extremities because they knew they were going to continue to roll out 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, now 5G, soon to be 6G. This is directly out of the mouths of the people in the White House. But again, people don't want to believe that the 5G towers actually give out radiation because, well, that's too much for their brains to think about. But if they actually realize that and then they hear this, maybe it'll help wake them up.
We discovered soon after I entered office that with the specter of an atomic war looming like Armageddon, far nearer than it does today, the United States government actually did carry out on our citizens experiments involving radiation. That's when I ordered the creation of this committee. Dr. Faden and the others did a superb job. They enlisted many of our nation's most significant and important medical and scientific ethicists. They had to determine first whether experiments conducted or sponsored by our government between 1944 and 1974 met the ethical and scientific standards of that time and of our time. And then they had to see to it that our research today lives up to nothing less than our highest values and our most deeply held beliefs. From the beginning, it was obvious to me that this energetic committee was prepared to do its part. We declassified thousands of pages of documents. We gave committee members the keys to the government's doors, file cabinets, and safes. For the last year and a half, the only thing that stood between them and the truth were all the late nights and hard work they had to put in. This report I received today is a monumental document in more ways than one. But it is a very, very important piece of America's history, and it will shape America's future in ways that will make us a more honorable, more successful, and more ethical country. What this committee learned, I would like to review today with a little more detail than Dr. Faden said, because I think it must be engraved on our national memory. Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. The goal was to understand the effects of radiation exposure on the human body. While most of the tests were ethical by any standards, some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were conducted. They failed both the test of our national values and the test of humanity. In one scientist injected plutonium into 18 patients without their knowledge. In another, doctors exposed indigent cancer patients to excessive doses of radiation, a treatment from which it is virtually impossible that they could ever benefit. These and other experiments were carried out on precisely those citizens, members of the military. They were also test subjects. Informed consent means your doctor tells you the risk of the treatment you are about to undergo. Informed consent was withheld. Americans were kept in the dark about the effects of what was being done to them. The deception extended beyond the test subjects themselves, for these experiments were kept secret. And they were shrouded not for a compelling reason of national security, but for the simple fear of embarrassment. So today, on behalf of another generation of American leaders and another generation of American citizens, the United States of America offers a sincere apology to those of our citizens who were subjected to these experiments, to their families, and to their communities. When the government does wrong, we have a moral responsibility to admit it. The duty we owe to one another to tell the truth and to protect our fellow citizens from excesses like these is one we can never walk away from. Our government failed in that duty, and it offers an apology to the survivors and their families, and to all the American people who must be able to rely upon the United States to keep its word, to tell the truth, and to do the right thing. We know there are moments when words alone are not enough. That's why I'm instructing my cabinet to use and build on these recommendations, to devise promptly a system of relief, including compensation that meets the standards of justice and conscience. When called for, we will work with Congress to serve the best needs of those who were harmed. Make no mistake, as the committee report says, there are circumstances where compensation is appropriate as a matter of ethics and principle. I am committed to seeing to it that the United States of America lives up to its responsibility. Our greatness is measured not only in how we so frequently do right, but also how we act when we know we've done the wrong thing, how we confront our mistakes, make our apologies, and take action. That's why this morning I signed an executive order instructing every arm and agency of our government that conducts, supports, or regulates research involving human beings to review immediately their procedures in light of the recommendations of this report and the best knowledge and standards available today, and to report back to me by Christmas. I've also created a Bioethics Advisory Commission to supervise the process, to watch over all such research, and to see to it that never again do we stray from the basic values of protecting our people and being straight with them. The report I received today will not be left on a shelf to gather dust. Every one of its pages offers a lesson, and every lesson will be learned from these good people who put 1.5 years of their lives into the effort to set America straight. Medical and scientific progress depends upon learning about people's responses to new medicines, to new cutting-edge treatments. Without this kind of research, our children would still be dying from polio and other killers. Without responsible radiation research, we wouldn't be making the progress we are in the war on cancer. We have to continue to research, but there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. There are local citizens review boards. There are regulations that establish proper informed consent and ensure that experiments are conducted ethically. But in overseeing this necessary research, we must never relax our vigilance. The breathtaking advances in science and technology demand that we always keep our ethical watchlight burning. No matter how rapid the pace of change, it can never outrun our core convictions that have stood us so well as a nation for more than 200 years now, through many different scientific revolutions. I believe we will meet the test of our times, that as science and technology evolve, our ethical conscience will grow, not shrink. Informed consent, community right to know, our entire battery of essential human protections, all these grew up in response to the health and humanitarian crises of this 20th century. They are proof that we are equal to our challenges. Science is not ever simply objective. It emerges from the crucible of historical circumstances and personal experience. Times of crisis and fear can call forth bad science, even science we know in retrospect to be unethical. Let us remember the difficult years chronicled in this report and think about how good people could have done things that we know were wrong. Let these pages serve as an internal reminder to hold humility and moral accountability in higher esteem than we do the latest development in technology.